Racism is not just a black and white issue, it exists within communities of color today. Today, we are diving into a complex and often unspoken topic. Why do some Latinos discriminate against black people? Stick around as we unpack the history, cultural dynamics, and the path forward. First, let's watch these clips and I will share my thought later.
I lived in Miami for almost a year, and while I was there, in the apartment building that I was living in Pembroke Pines, there were some Mexican guys doing some repairs on the roof. They saw me pass by walking my dog, and they say, "Beautiful, morena." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And they say, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Cuba." They say, "Cuba? We didn't know people in Cuba look like you." And I said, "Like me, like what? Black?" And he just stopped on his tracks and changed the subject. The majority of Latino people are very racist. I didn't know that I was living in a very racist country until I met my Jamaican husband, and he made me realize how racist people in Cuba were. And once your eyes are open to this, you cannot unsee it. There was a time in Jamaica when you could watch Spanish television. We had two TV stations, Univision and Telemundo. These TV stations, each of them had one black anchor. One had one female for the news, and the other one had a male, two black people. Both TV stations show a wide array of telenovelas, which is basically Spanish soap operas. And these telenovelas were made and produced in Latin America. Brazil, Colombia, Mexico are one of the biggest places where soap operas are made. Now you tell me now how a Colombian telenovela of 350 episodes don't have one black person in it. If you see a black actor on a telenovela, is actually playing a slave or a character that they are trying to bring back to life, like Celia Cruz. So these have just added to that white supremacy and had made people from other places believe that black people doesn't exist in Latin America any at all. So if as a Jamaican, you travel to Miami and you suffer what he did, don't be surprised. I'm sorry this happens to you, but it's a sad truth. Hopefully this will change soon in the future. Thanks for watching. Mucha love.
I'm Latina.
I'm black.
Obviously. But this is what we've learned from being together for almost 18 years. I've learned from his black family that you just have to have thick skin. Like if you don't have thick skin and yeah, you're going to get made fun of. Like no matter what, you're just going to get made fun of. So grow that thick skin if you don't have it already.
With her family, you got to have a thick belly. You know what I'm saying? You got to be able to eat. Bro, if you try to get one plate and be done, like that's not going to happen. I don't care if it's the T.I., if it's the Suegra, it don't matter who it is, bro. Like, you gotta be able to eat because they don't keep feeding you until you
and
bust.
Not only that, they're also going to give you like a plate to go.
And yes,
it's rude. You have to take
food.
Yeah,
eat everything.
Next thing I have is you have to be on beat. Like you can't just clap off beat around his family because you will get called out so fast. Have to be on beat. You have to have rhythm.
You be off beat and you throw the whole thing.
And everyone's quick to tell me if I'm off beat. And usually I feel like I'm on beat, but it's like I learned quickly, like do not be off beat around
you can't be off beat.
No.
Yeah, that's game over right there. Yeah. Man, weddings, they gonna start super late, bro. Like they're not, or everybody's gonna be late. Like it's gonna start, you know what I'm saying? The Mexican wedding, it's gonna start. Everybody gonna be late because don't nobody care about that ceremony part. Everybody want to get to the reception, but then the reception gonna start late. Mm-hmm. But then it's also gonna end late. So the band don't show up till 11:45 to 12:15, and they play till 4. So you gotta be prepared for that.
Like you go all the way till breakfast. Yeah. Speaking of weddings, okay. So like with weddings in your family, they wear like the color of the wedding. Like they coordinate and they're like, what colors are your wedding? And if you say blue, then everybody wears blue. I've never like heard of that, but they're like, do you have your blue dress? And I'm like, what? Why would I be wearing what the bridesmaids are wearing? Like it doesn't make sense to me, but like his family is constantly asking what the color is. And I'm like, who cares what the color is? Like,
always got a theme.
I want to wear a cute wedding outfit. Like I don't want to wear the color of the wedding. But it's always a question in the group chat about that.
Good. That's good. I already kind of talked about, but like tortillas, man. You know, like there's tortillas for breakfast, lunch, dinner.
They go with everything.
And salsa. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not a bad thing. It's something I wasn't used to. You know what I'm saying? Until we got together, and so I keep tortillas on deck. You know what I'm saying? You never know who's gonna come through. You know what I'm saying? We go back from the club, whatever. You know, her father-in-law flipping tortillas at 2:00 in the morning sometimes. You know what I'm saying? That's happened here in this house.
Tortillas and salsa. You need it at every meal.
So yeah.
Just a few things we've learned in this Black-Mexican relationship.
You know what I'm saying? It's just a minor thing.
Yeah. I can think of more.
Black people in Mexico were not even acknowledged until recent years. Their presence was not acknowledged by the government up until very recent years. But yet, they have been there since days of slavery. You understand? So, since the days of slavery, a lot of the slaves in North America, in the United States, a lot of the slaves ran to Mexico to hide. And a lot of them have been living there. And not only that, but a lot of these Spaniards, they brought some slaves to Mexico too. So black people have been in Mexico for hundreds of years. But Mexican government has not acknowledged their presence until very recent years. And that is why I made a video and called it Afro-Mexican, because these people have been there for many years with their own communities, speaking Spanish, of course, but they acknowledge their African ancestry. They acknowledge it. That's why they self-identify as Afro-Mexican, because they're acknowledging their African roots. And the government has not bothered with them. When you watch telenovelas, Spanish telenovelas, have you ever seen a black man? No, never. But yet, black people have been there since the Europeans have been there for hundreds of years.
Racism and denial in Spain.
Escriban diciendo que yo como estoy morena, Baltasar era negro, que lo que estoy haciendo es una palabra nueva que no sabía en mi vida. Blackface. Blackface, que estoy haciendo racismo. Por Dios, ni soy racista, ni este programa, no tenemos un colaborador negro. Eso es el único problema.
Bueno, yo estoy negra.
Tú estás negra.
Además que,
por favor,
además
de verdad.
de momento.
Hemos puesto un tono normalito.
Nos vendría
yo suelo
muy bien,
estar así en verano.
Claro, que ya
de verdad, pero esto no es racismo. Baltasar es negro. Los niños, yo soy una embajadora.
Yo no lo he dicho.
Cognitive dissonance, denial or pure ignorance. What do you think?
It is no secret that Hollywood has a very racist past and sometimes still a racist present. However, do you know about Rita Hayworth, the Hispanic woman who was convinced to get surgeries just so she could look white so she could become successful? Rita Hayworth was born Margarita Carmen Casino in New York City. So when Margarita started her acting career, she could only book roles for exotic women of color. And back in the day, those were very limited, which meant you would probably have no success. After a few years of playing exotic women in films, Margarita was able to sign a contract with Columbia Pictures. Harry Cohen, the co-founder and president of Columbia Pictures, decided that in order for her to become successful, she had to get surgery to look like a white woman. So, with a desire and ambition to become a successful actress, Rita did just that. She went through painful electrolysis to change her hairline, which was considered too ethnic. She dyed her naturally black hair to a ginger shade. And the list of procedures time.
A diferença toda é que chama muita atenção.
Olha, eu vou falar uma coisa do tempo da minha avó, que já dizia para minha mãe, olha, é bom ter que achar um branco para se casar, que é para melhorar a raça. E isso continua até hoje.
There's a painting called The Rejeição de Kant. And the painting portrays the actual story of Brazil. So you have a picture of the dark, black-skinned grandmother. She has her hands in the air. Next to her, seated, is her mulatta daughter. She obviously had a relationship with a white man, so her daughter is progressively lighter skinned. Next to the mulatta daughter is the Portuguese immigrant. He's white. And in the mulatta daughter's arms is the white son. So after 2 to 3 generations, the blackness of the family has completely disappeared. And so the black grandmother is giving thanks to God, like, thank you for moving this black stain from my family.
Que a minha família, eu falei, daqui uns anos, não vai ter mais ninguém negro.
It is normal to call a black person negro. Literally, we don't have the...
How do you know if a Spanish-speaking person is calling you the N-word? Let's start by stating the fact that, yes, there is an N-word in Spanish. The word is negrata and it's only used in Europe. It's used in Spain. In Latin America, we do not have this word. We do not use this word. However, we can still very much be called the N-word. So how do Spanish-speaking people call us the N-word in Spanish? By using black not as an adjective, but as a noun. And I feel like that's what he meant by, we know by the tone. They are not using negro to describe us. They're using negro to tell us what we are. You know, put us in our place or something. Let me give you an example. If in Spanish you say the sentence, así hay muchos latinos negros, that means, yeah, there are a lot of black Latinos. You're using it as an adjective. You're using it to describe people. Or if you say Barack Obama is negro, you're saying Barack Obama is black. On the other hand, you can use black, and this is done by racist people here, you can use it as a noun. Barack Obama es un negro. Ugh, the ick. That it means, well, Barack Obama is a black? I feel like you guys do have this expression, and it is kind of offensive in American English to say a black. Trust me, it is much worse in Spanish. In Spanish, it does sound like the N-word. But there's another way that they do it, which is that they accompany the word negro with an actual adjective. So you know that negro is what you are, that is your name, that's a noun, and the adjective is an additional. They don't have to do it with a particularly negative adjective, but they usually do. So they usually say, negro orgulloso, negro ladrón, negro hijo de puta, negro perezoso, negro esto, negro lo otro. Like you are, you black this, black that, black that, black that. Another way they use it is that they unnecessarily tell you someone's race and switch it with their profession. Like you could be using their name or their profession, but they actively choose to call them a black. They don't say something like, oh yeah, that woman's annoying. They say, esa negra es insoportable. Like that N-word is annoying. Oof, when they use esa or ese negro, like, you know, like that's, the tone is there. But yeah, rule of thumb in general, if you're being called the N-word in Spanish, they're using it not as an adjective, not as a way to describe you, to identify you. It is not necessary to specify your race, but they use it as a noun to tell you that's what you are and that's all you are. Another fun fact about racism in Latin America, that there are a lot of expressions referencing skin color that are normally used by people. Most people who use these do not consider themselves racist, even though they are. So they call black people cardboard colored people, poop colored people, poverty colored people. I am not making this up. They actually do that. And they don't think they're being racist. They think it's playful. So yeah, the more you know.
Soon as you turn on the television in Mexico, you will see a telenovela with people that look a lot like me.
But that's the problem, isn't it? Whether we identify it as white presenting, white passing, or even just a white Latina, we benefit from the colorism that is so prevalent in our community. And no hate to this creator herself, because I love the way she advocates for the Latino community and using that privilege to do so. But that's what we need more of. As a Chicana, I can tell you firsthand how frustrating it feels when somebody says, well, you don't look Latina. Or if you are Latina, then prove it, speak Spanish. Or you're one of those whitewashed Latinas, aren't you? Tell that to my immigrant mom who raised me, you know? Stuff like that is so invalidating. But at the end of the day, we need to recognize who is most deeply harmed by the colorism that we benefit from. And that is Black and Indigenous Latinos. I say this all not to point blame at this creator or anybody else who uses the caveat of media in Latino America and Mexico specifically, but this is to point out the responsibility we have to use the colorism we benefit from to uplift our more marginalized Latino brothers and sisters. And by uplifting, I do not mean speaking over, I mean amplifying, encouraging, supporting, and creating safe spaces where darker-skinned and Black Latinos can feel comfortable being in spaces that can start on TikTok, that can start in conversations about politics in Latino America, and it can go as far as anywhere and everywhere you want to take it. And we must do this all while not upholding a white savior complex, but actively trying to dismantle the colorism that takes place in our communities. Amor y paz, mi gente.
So I was just cooking pollo de tinga and I got really sad because my Mexican grandma died a few years ago and I never got to learn her culture. I learned certain things and I'm grateful for that. However, racism is the reason why I didn't get to learn more, and the reason why my mom didn't learn Spanish, and the reason I didn't learn Spanish. So my grandma dealt with racism practically her whole life, and she would not admit to that because she was super prideful. But she didn't know English until maybe the 4th or 5th grade, and she got bullied for it because, you know, Spanish was her first language and she wasn't familiar with it. However, she grew up in a very predominantly white area, and so did my mom and her siblings, and she never taught them Spanish because I think it was a defense mechanism. She was like, no, if they don't know Spanish, then it's okay, you know, they'll grow up white and they won't have to deal with the struggles that I had to deal with. And that makes me very, very sad because not only did my mom get affected by that, I got affected by that. And now I was her caregiver for probably like 2 to 3 years. And I learned Spanish from her. She had Alzheimer's and she only spoke Spanish because she resorted back to practically her younger self and her understandings, and that was only Spanish. So I had to learn Spanish pretty quickly, and we would listen to Bad Bunny and she would just talk to me, and I really enjoyed those times. But it made me very sad because I missed out on a whole culture because of racism. Because people looked at her and said, you're not white, you're brown. And she felt like she needed to be white to fit in. And not only that, she had very white children, blonde, blue-eyed. And they said to her, oh, are you the nanny? Like, who says that? Like, it just disgusts me. However, that's what she had to deal with. So her whole life, she repressed her culture. But I wouldn't say that fully because we did have flan for my birthday and we did have enchiladas all the time and we had Mexican cooking. However, cooking traditional dishes like I am tonight, I really just am sad because I wish she was around and I wish she would have taught me her culture because I truly love the culture. I know I'll raise my children in it. And I know that I'll be constantly cooking these traditional meals and having traditions in my family. But it just makes me sad because I wish that she could see me right now doing all of this and learning Spanish and going to Mexico and just embracing my culture. It just makes me sad. Fuck racism.
Why are so many Latinos racist against Black people? Good question. So first of all, let me start by acknowledging that's the truth. And anyone that says otherwise is not helpful in this whole conversation. Like white people saying, I don't see color. Secondly, race is just a construct that was invented by European people intended to divide us, which they successfully managed to do. And unfortunately, just like many other purposefully marginalized communities, we play along exactly into the narrative of letting them divide us. We all have that tío or abuelito or papá in our family that is racist, that is, has issues with Black people or Asian people or is homophobic or transphobic. And most likely it's more family members than not. The issue is that it's really difficult to have these conversations. But we need to have these conversations with our own community. We need to call out, call in, and educate our own family members, our own friends. And too often I see Latinos stay silent. And they say, oh, that's just how he is. And yes, I use he a lot because it's a lot of times the man, at least in my experience. And if you live in LA, you probably know the scandal we recently had with the leaked audio. For me, the only scandal really was that so many Latinos that I know pretended that that's a surprise. Really? That's exactly like white people pretending that they're surprised that racism exists. There are so many issues in our Latino community, from being anti-Black to brown people calling themselves white. I mean, please identify as whatever you want, but it's weird. To light-skinned Latinos like myself, pretending that they have the same racism to deal with as a Black person. And then there is the whole other layer of not being Latino enough, not being Black enough, not being brown enough. It's like our community is so busy tearing each other down that we lost sight of who is actually doing the oppression here. I had a US-born friend here in LA whose both parents were Mexican, but she has never been to Mexico and she doesn't speak Spanish. And she told me that in her opinion, I wasn't really Mexican, which I thought was funny. And I immigrated as an adult. I'm not even first generation. I'm a Mexican immigrant in the United States. But to her, just because my mom was European, that was enough to tell me I wasn't actually Latina. And those are the same kind of people that pretend that all Latinos are brown and act like Afro-Latinos don't exist. It's time for all of us to unite because together we're not the minority. We are the majority if we just have each other's back. I called out the racism and colorism in the Latino community and got so many comments like this one. What about Black people being racist against Latina people? Let's talk about it. But first, quick reminder. Correcting someone's grammar or spelling, even if they're a racist prick, is still something I don't appreciate on my page. Access to education is privilege that not all of us have. And I mean this in a completely non-ironic way. My own grandparents never had access to education, including elementary school. They never learned how to read or write. My grandpa collected trash, and my grandma sold candy on the streets, while other children attended elementary school. I myself am neurodiverse, and I struggle with spelling. Now, let's get into this comment. First of all, a lot, millions of Latina people are Black, which seems to be something that a lot of you commenting this continuously forget, which in and of itself is colorism. Now, why have I never addressed this, even though there's many videos on my page that you can find about me addressing the colorism and racism in my own community? It's because I'm not Black. I come from indigenous Mexican people. I feel confident talking about issues from my own community. Do I know what you're talking about? Yes. Have I experienced it myself? Last time was yesterday, when we went shopping with my dad before he left back to Mexico, and we were speaking in Spanish, and the person at the store kept basically racially profiling us throughout the entire store until I got fed up and left. And yes, that salesperson was a Black woman that then made a comment to another salesperson about the fact that my dad is paying with only cash because she remembered us from the day before. In that moment, I did not call her out when she basically called my dad a narco. The reason why is because I respect the boundaries of my dad and he doesn't want me to do that. I spent my whole life defending him because I have a lot of white privilege. And I know and respect that my dad does not appreciate these kind of confrontations, especially in a foreign country, in a language he doesn't speak. My dad doesn't speak English. So out of respect for him, I bit my tongue and we left without purchasing more. So yes, I know what these comments are referring to because I felt it too, many times. But it is important to remember the root of all of this. And the root all goes back to this. And that's why I will never stop saying that all of us should unite. And let's not forget who profits of communities of color being against each other. Because it's none of us. We gotta stick together and we gotta do better. And whataboutism is never helping a conversation.
Okay, so I hope this doesn't come out problematic in any kind of way. However, I think I should say this because I've yet to hear anyone talk about this. I'm someone that has been very vocal about a lot of different causes, a lot of marginalized populations, even when they're not even part of my community. However, I have been noticing, especially as I've been doing a lot of community work within my Latino community and the undocumented population, the POC solidarity is not there. We are very separated, unfortunately. There are some that are, especially the younger generations, I want to say Gen Z for sure. But even as when protesting, it was mostly us, Latinos. Two things with this. One, I freaking hate the narrative where people say, well, 60% of Latinos voted for Trump. For starters, you're only accounting for the people that are actually able to vote within our community. I think it's extremely racist to say, well, what's happening to community is your fault because you voted against your own people. You're not accounting for the people who absolutely despise the Democratic Party. And believe it or not, that's a huge amount of people there that people often forget. And the other part is the people that actually didn't think he was going to win. They were like, I talked to so many Latinos, they were like, I didn't even think he was going to win, to be honest. lastly, I don't think anyone owes us solidarity per se. However, I wouldn't be surprised if other things start happening in other communities and just Latinos to stay quiet. Because, I mean, I don't think I personally would do that per se, because I'm someone that likes to advocate for injustices in general. But I can see why a person may be like, well, what's the point? You didn't say anything when we were suffering. I don't know. What do y'all think?
To understand Latino anti-Blackness, we have to go back, way back to the colonial era. Spanish and Portuguese colonizer created a racial caste system that prioritized European features and marginalized African and indigenous people. This legacy of colorism still shapes attitudes today. Turn on telenovela and you will quickly notice the pattern. Light-skinned Latinos are the heroes, while Afro-Latinos are being erased or relegated to servant roles. Mainstream media has reinforced anti-Blackness in subtle and overt ways, shaping public perception across generations. Many Latinos immigrants come to the United States striving for the American dream, and some buy into the idea that distancing themselves from Blackness will help them succeed. The modern minority might, often associated with certain immigrant groups, foster division and reinforces negative stereotypes about Black people. Latinos and Black people often live side by side in communities facing similar struggles, poverty, police violence, and systemic racism. But instead of solidarity, these challenges sometimes fuel tension, competition for resources, and discrimination. So how do we break this cycle? It starts with education, open conversation, and acknowledging the shared history of oppression. Afro-Latinos are leading the charge in reclaiming their identity and challenging anti-Blackness within Latino culture. What do you think? Have you witnessed anti-Blackness in Latino communities? Share your thoughts in the comment box. Until next time, cheers and have a good one.